What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by DraftKings. I am your host, Chris Raybon. It's NFL Week 10. It's time for some anytime touchdowns for every game on the slate. As always, I'll be joined momentarily by one of the most accurate rankers in the game, and Sean Koerner, and touchdown betting savant Gilles Gallant. Last week, the guys hit on a bunch. Zacchaeus, Yosavash, J-Mo, Juwan Jennings, Bowers, Ty Johnson, Elijah Arroyo. So today we'll keep it going in week 10, and we'll also get some parlays set up for Sunday and Monday Night Football, our favorite Sunday play as well. You can track those in the Parlay Express account in the Action Network app. Make sure you follow that account if you want to track. And if you want to tail some of the bets, just look for the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet. Now, before we get into these touchdowns, I'll toss it over to myself for a word from our sponsor. The Action Network podcast is sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook, and in partnership with DraftKings, Action Network podcast listeners get a great offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if your bet wins, and 3 months of NBA League Pass. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on star player props and in-progress games right as they happen. To get started, use promo code Action Network when signing up with DraftKings. That's code Action Network when signing up with DraftKings for 3 months of NBA League Pass and $300 back in bonus bets if your bet wins. The crown is yours. All right, starting off early again. We got a reprieve from some of these international games, but Koerner, we're back at it. So I'm assuming you're going to give us a guy who's going to score the first touchdown. So who you got for Falcons, Colts in Germany?
Yeah, I'll try my best here. And yeah, I can't wait to be sweating these before Action Playbook Live Sunday morning, bright and early on the West Coast with you, Raybon. But I'm going to go with Alec Pierce for the Colts at plus 270, just because his stock just continues to shoot up. And he's always had, a ton of upside as a downfield target. So I was always curious, how his chemistry would be with Daniel Jones. And he's still getting targeted heavily downfield. 24% of his targets have been downfield, which is the 7th highest rate in the league. But he's also had a much higher floor this year as well. He's now seeing 4 more catches in 4 of the last 6 games. But he has yet to score a touchdown this year. So I think the market's, probably starting to sour on him a little bit. But I think he's extremely due. And, it's crazy that he doesn't have a touchdown, just considering how high scoring and how good this Colts offense has been. So I'm projecting closer to plus 220 here. So think we have some value on him at plus 270. And for the Falcons, I'm going to go with another guy who's yet to score this year, Darnell Mooney at plus 360. He hasn't scored this year, but he did miss, a couple games due to injury, and, maybe wasn't 100% as soon as he returned, but, he still has big playability. And this could be a high scoring game where the Falcons will probably have to throw more, try to keep up with the Colts and be more aggressive. So that kind of fits right into what Mooney does best. So I like Mooney here as well at plus 360.
Yeah, and judging by Jill, I think you're going to keep it going with some former Falcons, but this is the Giants and the Bears, but I think you like some former Falcons. Tell us who you like for this New York-Chicago matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I gave him out last week against the Bengals, and he scored his first touchdown of the season, so we're running him back. Olamide Zacchaeus, especially when he's around plus 425 right now, so I feel like we got to run it back at that price. Over the last 2 games, just been a complete shift on how they're using him. 15 targets over the last 2 games, 3 red zone targets. Facing the Giants, who do play a lot of man coverage, a lot of single high safety, both at the top 5 rate. Well, Zacchaeus behind Rome Odunze. Now, Rome Odunze is around plus 150, but it's more than DJ Moore, more than Luther Burden. He has the 2nd highest targets per route run against those coverages. And the Giants, they've given up 8 passing touchdowns just over the last 3 games. I feel like they're kind of falling apart here. They're bottom 5 in targets, catches, and yards to wide receivers. So I think we run back Zacchaeus here in this spot. Anything over 4-1, I love that price. This one, though, Giants have a lot of cardio king picks on this side. You could look at Darius Slayton. I'm going to take the latest one, which is Ray McCloud at plus 750. He played over 90% of snaps last week. Very high route participation. He only saw 1 target, and no catches. And looking at this Giants wide receiver room, it's pretty barren. Even little Jordan Humphrey was getting action for them for a couple of games, right? So the Bears, they've given up the second most touchdowns to wide receivers this year, third most passing touchdowns overall. I think we just take a flyer on McLeod. He's playing as much as Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton. Those guys are around like plus 250, plus 300. Let's just take the wide receiver 3.
Oh man, and you called out Singletary last week, and he didn't end up hitting on a touchdown,
So
but
close.
that was a good call on just just being that number 2 back. He was undervalued. I think if McLeod gets that type of route rate, it's he would be super undervalued in this spot. Bills Dolphins in Miami. For the Bills, I'm going with James Cook 2+ touchdowns at plus 290. Now, he's already done this twice this year in 8 games, about 25% of the times. And this Dolphins run defense, not very good. This Dolphin defense, not very good, period, but that's good for the Bills. That means they'll be leading. I don't think this is as much of a Josh Allen scramble game, a Josh Allen run game. He tends to do that a lot against a team like the Chiefs, playoff atmosphere. But in this spot, I think they go back to Cook here. And I think he gets back in the touchdown column with a couple. And then Ollie Gordon, the second, assuming he suits up. If he doesn't, I would pivot to Jalen Wright, who will probably be active then as a number 2 running back. But the Bills really aren't giving up anything through the air. I believe it's 7 passing touchdowns, and they've given up 10 to running backs on the ground. So you want running backs. Devon Achane, he's minus 135. I don't know if the Dolphins get to 2 touchdowns. So I'm going to go with the backup running back who has been mixing in the red zone in scoring position. And you also have some outs if there's a blowout or whatnot. And Wright isn't active because Gordon's active. He would kind of get that mop-up duty and would have a chance there. So like Gordon at 5-1 as well. Saints, Panthers. I mean, this all of a sudden could be a blowout too. This Saints team has just been looking listless, but maybe there's going to be some changes with the trades. So, Koerner, who do you like in Saints-Panthers divisional matchup?
Like is a strong word because, the Saints have the second lowest team total of the week. So if I have to go with somebody, it's Taysom Hill here at plus 390. Gilles, plus 390. Just curious, how high his odds normally are. This seems pretty high for Taysom Hill, especially because, last week he saw the highest snap count of the year and his most productive game on the ground. He had 30 rushing yards. And, the Saints offensive line is decimated with McCoy on IR. They traded Penning away. Fuaga's doubtful. So it would make a ton of sense to kind of get Hill back there to kind of have a spark in the run game possibly, especially once they get to the red zone. So, give me Taysom Hill at plus 390. And on the other side, I'm going to have to go with the dart throw here. Mitchell Evans at 16-1. Evans is a solid tight end prospect despite going in the 5th round. But as we've seen, this year's tight end class is historically good. So he's obviously going to be overlooked in this year's class. But he's out there a ton for a number 3 tight end. He's typically running around on 30 to 40% sometime of Bryce Young's dropbacks. And he does profile as the tight end who would be, solid in the red zone specifically. And he has a touchdown the season already, and he's 15-1. So, or 16-1 right now. So I like his odds here, and I'm actually projecting him closer to plus 900. So I'm showing quite a bit of value on him.
Koerner, I was going to tell you, I tracked all the DraftKings anytime touchdown odds, and this would be the highest odds of the season for Taysom Hill. Last week, it was the highest at plus 310. 390 is the highest that we've had so far this season.
Nice.
He's got to score. I mean, it's just like every week you think it's going to happen, and it's like he gets 3 carries. But this week, trade deadline pass, something weird is going to happen in this game. I know it. I just know it. Speaking of weird, Browns at Jets. This game might be a lot of fun, might not be any fun. I'm going to roll with Cedric Tillman for the Browns, plus 450. He should be back. It sounds like, he's practicing in full. Kevin Stefanski kind of said, as long as he looks good in practice, we expect to activate him. So obviously, check the inactive list and, the transactions on Friday. But assuming he's active, I think he'll slot right back into that number 2 role. Isaiah Bond banged up anyway. Judy's been unproductive. So, Tillman could return to being the number one receiver, wide receiver, I should say, for the Cleveland Browns. But assuming he's a number two, I think that sets up really well because the Jets, they're terrible against number two receivers. And a lot of that was, Sauce Gardner, and he's no longer there. So I just think they're going to be bad against outside receivers in general. But the DVOA against wide receiver two is 35.5%, 31st in the NFL, according to FTN. So just a spot where, Dylan Gabriel hasn't gotten much going. Most of it has been to the tight ends. But this is a matchup where I think you could see the Browns get something going on the outside a little more just because of, the trade of Sauce and the jet scheme. And the other side looks like Garrett Wilson's going to return. I don't know who the hell else is going to be running routes for the Jets at wide receiver.
I have a
guy. We know. Yes. So we got, I know you're talking about John Mechie. Nah, just kidding.
Well, yeah, actually.
Right, but yeah, A.D. Mitchell, John Mechie are there now, but I don't know who's going to be active and inactive, and that's saying something because usually I can have a pretty good feel for it. So there's like 7 or 8 possibilities. Wilson's the only guy I think you can be confident in, and Breece Hall as well. But who knows with him? And his odds are higher or shorter. So I want some Wilson in this spot at plus 240. I think that's kind of insane given that the Browns are going to play man coverage. They are going to play some single high. So Wilson should still get opportunities singled up, even though it's quality coverage against this Browns team. And they have been exploitable through the air at times. 10 receiving touchdowns to opposing wideouts. That is tied for the 6th most in the NFL. And you wouldn't think that because the Browns have generally played good defense, but that it's just their kind of scheme. It's man heavy. They'll take some risks. So like Wilson to return and score, and like Tillman to return and score. A lot of times when guys come off injuries or layoffs or whatever, that's when they're the most undervalued because the market isn't like factoring in like the 100% route rate or whatever it might be that they could potentially get. So like Tillman and Wilson, Jill, you got the Jags at the Texans, another divisional matchup. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention about that Cleveland defense. They do not travel. If you look at their home and away splits this year, it's just been brutal for them. So I really like that Garrett Wilson pick. For Jaguars Texans, I'm going to go with a tight end on each side. Dalton Schultz is right now, he's around plus 300. I hate using the expression he's due, but this guy, it applies to him probably the most. He's running the second most routes, second highest target share for the Texans, despite no touchdowns yet this year behind Nico Collins. Davis Mills is starting. I think that actually should give Schultz a little bit of a target uptick, just being a little bit of a security blanket over the middle, shorter A dot. Jags defense is 25th in defensive DVOA versus tight ends, 8 touchdowns allowed to the position. So I like Dalton Schultz here. The next guy, though, I want to get a little crazy because you would think Hunter Long is probably the guy that you would want in this spot. I think we got to take Johnny Munt here at 11-1 because since the Brenton Strange injury, like he obviously hasn't seen a ton of targets, but he has technically a higher targets per route run than the starter Hunter Long in that stretch. He has more catches and targets overall as well versus zone defenses than what Long has. And the Texans, they play zone, 3rd highest rate, and low key been kind of crappy against tight ends, 8 touchdowns and tight ends as well. So we've seen in his time with the Vikings that he could be kind of a sneaky touchdown scorer, 6 touchdowns in 3 seasons with Minnesota. So I think if you want to take Hunter Long here at 4-1, I totally get it, but his backup should not be 11-1 in a favorable matchup, in my opinion. So Dalton Schultz at 3-1 and Johnny Munt at 11-1.
Yeah, and I like that situation. You kind of alluded to it. Is if you look at the receivers, I mean, who knows who's going to play how many snaps? But at tight end, it's like this 2-man rotation. So you kind of have this predictability even in the chaos. So I like that call there. Patriots, Bucks, Koerner. A rare early week over bet for me on this game. So I do like some scoring here. Who are you looking at as far as touchdowns on each side?
Yeah, so for the Patriots side, I'm going to go DeMario Pop Douglas at plus 250 because, he's been going off these past, few weeks. He's had a few long catches, really, developing solid chemistry with Drake May, who's, becoming one of the best QBs in the league. So he had 4 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown last week. And it looks like Kayshon Boutte is trending towards missing with a hamstring injury. And while it looks like, my guy Kyle Williams might see the biggest uptick in playing time if Booty's out, Douglas probably earned himself more playing time. He's been really limited, just running a route 35% of the time. But last week, he only ran 13 routes, but he was the first read on a team high 6 of them. So, he's clearly one of May's favorite targets. So I expect his playing time to go up and, the usage to hold. So I like him here, even though it's all the way down to plus 250. Maybe wait and see if Booty's actually ruled out before taking that, because I think they're just pricing in that Booty's out with that price. So I hold off on that till later in the week. And then on the Bucs side, I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield at plus 800 here. Baker's got to score a touchdown this year with his legs, and he's now on 6 straight seasons with a rushing touchdown. A lot of those seasons he only played a few games. And last year he had 3 rushing scores. Always willing to scramble, always, willing to put his body on the line when needed. So, I think he's due to get a score here in the second half of the season. The Bucs are coming off a bye, so he's probably as fresh as he's felt since, opening week. So, I think getting Baker Mayfield at plus 800 here is offering some decent value.
Yeah, and given the Patriots scheme and the fact that you don't expect the Bucs to have a lot of success with their traditional run game, Patriots have been good against the run, bad against the pass. I think the odds are definitely elevated for Baker in this spot. Next up, we got Ravens at Vikings. For the Ravens, I love Isaiah Likely at plus 285. He has a 71% route rate. Over the last 3 games, kind of been under the radar a little bit. Andrews doubled up in touchdowns on that Thursday night game, but Likely seeing just a ton of action. And he, Andrews is a trade candidate. So I think either way, Likely could potentially see an uptick here, especially coming off, the long extended rest. And the Minnesota Vikings have been exploitable with tight ends. They run that scheme. They're going to take a lot of their, second level players out of coverage and zones and, go blitz with them. And that can create openings. And Likely is a guy who can do it after the catch. He can get downfield in a hurry. So a lot of different ways for him to score. And then for the Vikings, I think you got to go with a back or a tight end. The Ravens have kind of really shut down receivers from a touchdown perspective over the last half of the year. First half, they were horrible, but I believe they haven't given up a touchdown to a wide receiver since week 5. So I want a back or a tight end. Minnesota, Aaron Jones is kind of the guy you would look at running back. Maybe Xavier Scott if he's out, but I think Hawkinson is a guy who still is underperforming. They're probably going to try to get him going at some point. I know he got in the end zone last game, I believe it was, but had 2 catches, didn't do anything else. So I think Hawkinson in a potential trailing game script, he's not going to block much. Love him at 3-1 here with the Ravens potentially putting up a lot of points early. They're great in the first half. So this could be a trailing game script for the Vikings. So like Hawkinson at 3-1, along with Likely, Jill, Cards, Seahawks. And this was the game, if I remember correctly, the first matchup where JSN was kind of quiet for a while. But who are you looking at on this one? Are you looking at the wide receivers? You going with tight ends against these zone-heavy defenses? What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't think I've bet Jackson Smith-Njigba for an anytime touchdown yet this season. I just, there's no value to me at this point. But the value to me is on Trey McBride at plus 210. I think with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, anything over plus 200 is an auto bet for me for Trey McBride. I think he's playing at an elite level right now in 3 games with Brissett as a starter, 32 targets, 4 end zone targets, 4 touchdowns. I'm not going to deny the Seahawks are a bit of a challenge defensively, but I just think McBride is playing on another level right now. And the Seahawks, pretty predictable. They do play a lot of zone, a lot of 2 high safety, both at a top 3 rate. Well, Trey McBride is the guy against both of those coverages. He leads the team in targets per route run and yards per route run against both of those coverages. So I think Trey McBride is probably my favorite touchdown bet of the week. This one, though, is a little bit of a Koerner special because he got me onto this guy last week. Elijah Arroyo at plus 425. We got him at plus 550 last week, Koerner, and he scored his first touchdown. So I'm running it back because He's second on the team with 5 red zone targets. The only reason he doesn't have 6 is because he scored a 22-yard touchdown just outside the red zone. And the Seahawks, they've shown they tend to go away from Jackson Smith-Njigba when they get to the red zone. He only has 4 red zone targets despite like a 45% target share in this offense. So with the Cardinals being very similar to the Seahawks, played a lot of zone, a lot of too high safety. Arroyo is second on the team in targets per route run against those coverages behind JSN. So I think right now, Arroyo, he earned himself some more playing time. I think anything over plus 400 rather is still pretty decent value.
Yeah, those Seahawks tight ends are like this whole offense is just. I think you want to invest, and I love Arroyo as a player. This tight end class is just unreal. Koerner, is this Isaac Tisla time again? You got the Lions. You're going outdoor golfing. You're outdoor golfing here. With no offensive line, but the Commanders' defense. I mean, I think Sam Darnold was 13 of 13 for 17.6 yards per pass attempt at one point. So yeah, this is quite the interesting matchup. Who you taking here?
Yeah, so I'll just cut to the chase here. I was all set to not go with my guy Tisla here and pivot to some other long shot, like, I don't know, Brock Wright or something like that. But this, because, Tisla only ran 2 routes last week. He's clearly, the number 4 wide receiver. But this morning, offensive coordinator John Morton said they're going to get Tisla more involved this week. And that he's shown a ton of progress. I think he got benched. There was a Sunday night game a few weeks ago. He missed the block on a screen pass. Ever since then, I think he's been in the doghouse. So that's probably what they're referring to. So again, I was all set to move off of him, but I'm going with Isaac Tisla here at plus 500. Again, I'm well aware he's the 5th, maybe sometimes the 6th option in this offense, but it's such an elite offense. They put up a ton of points, and he's the type of player, he's the type of receiver that's going to get random troll touchdowns when they get into the red zone. Like, that's his specialty right now. So, and he's already done it twice this year. So I think, it's reflected in the odds. I like him here at plus 500. If you can trust what John Morton said. I know people were giving me shit on Twitter saying he said that about JMO, but JMO's already out there pretty much every snap. I think in this case, they're just saying that Tisla is going to be on the field. I don't know if they're going to, scheme passes to him, but I just need him on the field. So give me Tisla again this week at plus 500. And on the Commander side, it's a little bit easier here. I think, Marcus Mariota at plus 500 is sort of a no-brainer bet because, he's taking over as a starter now with Jaden Daniels out with the arm injury, potentially for the rest of the season. And, Mariota is always a threat to run, especially once they get to the red zone. He has 1 rushing score in just his 3 starts this year. So I just think plus 500 is way too high for him. I have this closer to plus 350 as a fair price.
Yeah, and going back to Tisla, I think he will be on the field more because the Commanders' defense, unless they kind of switch up their scheme, they still play a lot of man, a lot of single high, and you generally beat that with receivers. Unless you're Sam Darnold, then it doesn't matter. You can tight end, receiver, whatever. But you would expect an uptick in just wide receiver usage versus tight ends, and so I think it's a good call to kind of pivot off Brock Wright in this spot. Rams at the Niners. This is always a fun one. Niners tend to have the Rams number a little bit, but for the Rams, I'm going to Kyren Williams at even money. I actually have him around 60% in this spot. I know Blake Corum is kind of emerging as well, but Kyren, this is a revenge game because he felt like he lost the game for them in that first meeting with the fumble. That could have essentially cost him a touchdown as well. So he still scored in 5 out of 8 games, and that's what he's been doing over the last 3 years. So I'm right in line with that. I have him right around 60%. The market is saying more like 50%. So give me some Kyren, and the Rams are favored here pretty substantially. I think a little too much, but I'm still showing value on Kyren. So like him, and then for the Niners, going with Jawan Jennings at plus 250, and this is a spot where yes, they're at home, but they'll probably have to throw a lot. This Rams offense is just so good. The Rams will probably be able to match them score for score. Last time they went into overtime, and Mac Jones ended up throwing for like 3 something. So Jennings, rounding into shape here. And Ricky Pearsall is just he's every week. It's just like, is he going to play? We don't know. You start the week optimistic, end the week a little more pessimistic. So it's trending that way again. Jennings is off the injury report though, so like him in what could be a close potential high scoring game here. I think this is a luck over, if I'm not mistaken. So like Juwan Jennings at plus 250. The Rams have been shaky against number one wideouts. That is every game on the slate except the Sunday and Monday night games. But first, we're going to do our favorite Sunday anytime touchdown parlay presented by DraftKings. We'll each pick our favorite player to find the end zone on the Sunday slate, parlay those together on DK, and then we'll jump into the primetime games after that. Koerner, start us off. Where are you going with your favorite Sunday daytime anytime touchdown?
I'm going to go with Alec Pierce here at plus 270. He hasn't scored yet this year, so he's due because he's one of the more underrated downfield wide receivers in the game right now. And it's crazy he hasn't scored because he's on the highest scoring offense in the league with the Colts, averaging 32 points per game. So I think we're getting some value here at Pierce at plus 270.
I'm going to roll with JMO here, Koerner. And this maybe, at least we'll get one of these guys between Slaw and JMO.
Maybe
but
both.
I do think, I think this matchup sets up well. I know it's outdoor golf and there's offensive line issues, but this is a team in the Commanders that has just been getting gashed through the air. They play a lot of single high. They play a lot of man coverage, which helps deep outside perimeter receivers. And on top of that, they just put their number one corner, or guy they thought he was anyway, Marshawn Lattimore, on IR. So now, do they end up kind of dedicating more coverage to a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, or how do they play? Does that change anything? Either way, I think it helps Jameson Williams out, and also I think the Detroit Lions might be a little bit over inflated in terms of the market in this spot, and so but that all just makes them trail more, which I think you also want for a guy like JMO, because this is a team that they can get up big in games, and it's just the David Montgomery show or the Jahmyr Gibbs show. So I want the Lions throwing the ball. I think they might have to a little bit more in this spot, and it's just a defense that you want to throw against. So give me JMO. Jill, close us out here. Favorite Sunday anytime touchdown?
Trey McBride right now against the Seahawks. I think he's playing the best at the position right now in the NFL. So I'm going to take him, especially when he's around like plus 210.
Yeah, and percent gives him a big boost. All right, Alec Pierce, Jameson Williams, Trey McBride. You parlay those together on DraftKings. You get over 22-1 parlay odds. That was our favorite anytime touchdown parlay presented by DraftKings. Now, let's get into Sunday Night Football. All right, we got the Steelers. Seems like every week the Steelers are just like on the Sunday night game or something. But here we are again. Steelers, field goal underdog. Like it's just like the same script over and over. Koerner, I'll start with you. Who do you like to score a touchdown in Pittsburgh, Los Angeles?
I'm going to go Jared Patterson here at 10-1. Patterson ended up having the hot hand last week against the Titans. It was a really disappointing performance by Kamani Vidal. I had him ranked inside my top 10 in our fantasy rankings. And I'm guessing, Vidal is going to get the first crack this week. He was too good, the few games heading into last week to just lose his job outright to Patterson. But it does mean that Patterson has some upside. And he actually outsnapped Vidal in short yardage situations. So if they get to the goal line, it's not out of question that Patterson could get the first crack at a goal line carry. So 10-1 just seems ridiculous for him because I'm projecting him closer to plus 500. I had to do a double take, so I went to go see your projections, Raybon. You're pretty similar to me. So I thought I was missing something, like Hampton was due back or something. So I have no idea why he's 10-1, but I think there's too much value on here to pass up.
Yeah, it's kind of absurd because even in that first game where he was active, I think he got something like 11 carries in that one too. Yeah. So you kind of felt like, okay, it's because of the blowout, but the writing was on the wall even there. So yeah, I think he's just one of those guys that's undervalued in the market. I'm gonna go with DK Metcalf on DK. Always love to roll with him. Koerner, you had a good call, I think, last week on him just being not kind of a guy that we want to be high on. Well, this week, going up against the Chargers, they play the second most zone coverage in the league behind the Las Vegas Raiders. And DK Metcalf has been far and away the Steelers' best receiver against zone. Usually you don't see that with wide receivers as much. Only, the really good ones. And I think Rodgers indoors against a zone-heavy defense, he's going to be able to target his number one receiver. And Metcalf is one of the few guys in the league that can run away from zone coverage. Like it's just not many guys can do that. He can. We've seen it a couple times already this year. So rolling with DK on DK plus 160. Gilles, who do you like for Steelers, Chargers to get in the end zone?
Yeah, I think I bet on him in each of the last two games. I'm going to go with Calvin Austin again at plus 375. Pretty much immediately jumped right back into the wide receiver 2 role in this team after coming back from injury. He's playing more snaps and running more routes than, Ben Skoranek or Roman Wilson. And he is right now leading the team in ADOT. That might change after that Roman Wilson catch from last week. But when I was checking the data, it was still Calvin Austin in this spot. And I think, again, just a very good matchup where they could be trailing. I think they're going to have to throw a little bit more on the Steelers side. So I like Calvin Austin at plus 375.
Jared Patterson, DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin. Parlay those three to find the end zone, and you get 120 to 1 odds on DraftKings. Very juicy. Love that. Monday night. This game, I believe, is a luck under. Shouts to our guy, Nick Giffen. So maybe touchdowns a little bit harder to come by. Both of these defenses are strong. But Koerner, who do you like to get in the end zone in Eagles, Packers?
Yeah, I like Luke Musgrave here at plus 340. He's probably going to step up for Tucker Kraft, who's out for the season now with the ACL tear last week. Kraft, the Packers took Kraft in the third round in 2023. They actually took Musgrave a round earlier in round 2. He's a very good tight end prospect, but obviously, Kraft's turned out to be one of the better tight ends in the league. So that's really hurt Musgrave's value in like dynasty formats. But with him, getting a step up here as the starter, I think the market's underrating him a bit. He's probably not going to have the same touchdown upside as Kraft, but certainly at plus 340, I think he makes a ton of sense. And I know, Raybon, your guy, John Fitzpatrick's going to mix in a lot more, especially in the red zone. But Musgrave has good like downfield pass catching ability and yards after the catch ability. So I think, he could score a longer one. He doesn't even need them, to get down to the red zone, throw him a 5-yard pass in the end zone. I think he has multiple different ways, given his skill set to score here. So I like taking him at plus 340.
Yeah. And, you expect the Eagles to cover wide receivers reasonably well. So I think it kind of elevates the odds for a guy like Musgrave. I'm going to roll with Devontae Smith in this spot. Plus 205, Packers zone heavy defense, and the only Eagles to catch touchdowns against zone this year are Goddard and Devontae Smith. And Goddard, he's just been, I think he's going to get a little more attention here. He's been a machine, don't get me wrong, but I think Devontae Smith always goes a little underlooked here. And I think this could be one of his, blow up games, especially if the Packers are able to, kind of follow through with the market's projecting them as, favorites by about a field goal in this spot. So give me Devontae Smith and what could be a trailing game script for the Eagles. Gilles, close us out. Who do you like for Packers Eagles Monday Night Football to score a touchdown?
Yeah, it's pretty chalky, but anytime I can get him at plus odds, I'm going to take it. Jalen Hurts, he's around plus 135, plus 140. I'm not really going to try to explain the touchdown history and pedigree that he has. It's just he has running back touchdown numbers as a quarterback, and he is the first in red zone rushing attempts for all quarterbacks. Only 5 touchdowns this year, so I think if anything, there's probably going to be a push for him. And I also would say that there's just a few more outs. Yeah,
You mean
a little
the
push in the
tush.
Yeah. But the thing that I like about this is just there's multiple outs. The fact that we could get a DPI in the end zone. We could get the tush push. He might scramble from the 10-yard line. There's just a lot of different ways that Jalen can score. So anytime I can get him at plus odds, I'm going to take him. And I think he's a great anchor leg for a parlay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jalen Hurts. I can't believe he only has 5. I think they were trying to get a little bit more creative in that. I think that's how Goddard stole 1 or 2. They had that shovel pass and things, but it seems like, it's got to kind of even out. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to add these anytime touchdown parlays to the Parlay Express account. This one is Luke Musgrave, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts on Monday Night Football. Parlay those 3 players to score a touchdown together, and you get 28 to 1 odds on DraftKings. Again, Parlay Express in the Action Network app. Long shot bets. Have some fun with us. And while you're looking at that in the Action app, be sure to sign up for Action Pro. It is the only way for you to get the best bets at the best prices with immediate notifications when Action experts like Gilles and Sean drop their picks. You can get $20 off right now by using a promo code POD20. That's POD20 when you sign up for a year of Action Pro. That's going to do it for our NFL Week 10 touchdown show presented by DraftKings. Be sure to follow Playbook on X, if you haven't already. Joe is at GDog5000 DAWG. Koerner is at the _oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. And if you want to tail some of the touchdown bets we discussed today, you can find the quick slip link in the podcast and video description or visit actionnetwork.com/bet. Now, until next time, let's get this money.